Good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast, Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Monday, August 16th, 2021. And our top story today, food to reduce anxiety and support mental health. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Travis Chilcott is the owner of Nutrition HealthWorks. Travis, welcome back to the program. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate being on.
Yeah, it's great. And we're going to talk nutrition and anxiety, food and anxiety. And, you know, we were talking off screen or off camera, and anxiety is obviously on the surge right now because of the pandemic and financial stress and health stress. And a lot of people use food and other means to cope with anxiety. How do you view anxiety from the position of a health coach, a nutritionist like yourself?
Yeah, so we see it from the food perspective on the relationship of food and how somebody reacts to the stressors. So what we look at is, okay, stressful moments, what are your triggers, and then how do you react to those triggers involving either food and also exercise as well.
Yeah, and so let's separate the exercise. We'll come back to that in a minute. Okay. We all have triggers. We all have anxiety. As I mentioned, financial anxiety. This pandemic has really put a lot of people on edge. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they had their compensation reduced. Maybe they had someone pass away. So that just breeds anxiety, and it's how you deal with it that can really lead to success or failure. When you think about food, are there certain things that we need to think about when we're about to, when we're about to put a piece of food in our mouth, whether it's going for an M&M or going for a piece of fruit?
Yeah, so awareness is going to be key. You may want to take a step back and analyze, okay, am I actually hungry, or am I eating because it's an emotional connection with food, or am I just, trying to use it as a coping mechanism? Because when we're in a stressful situation, our brain a lot of times craves carbohydrates and fats, and it's part of, the fight or flight syndrome and everything else. But carbohydrates and fats. And so a lot of times the foods that we turn to, unfortunately, are not usually those fruits. They're usually the M&Ms. They're usually, the higher carbohydrate foods and high fat food, chips, fried foods, breads and things like that, which aren't necessarily things you have to avoid. Don't get me wrong. It's just, those are moderation foods, and a lot of times when we're stressed, we're coping. It can be a reflection of a lot of baked goods. Maybe it's something that has a childhood memory association to, right? And then we overindulge, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, you may actually, as we're talking, I am craving M&Ms, pizza, you name it. I'm thinking about it right now. When you talk to your clients, Travis, and I would imagine that your business has really thrived. I know you do a lot of telehealth. But are you seeing clients that are really coming to you and saying, look, I'm anxious. I want to control these feelings. And you actually probably have to play a little bit of dietitian, nutritionist, but also, even though you're not a licensed psychotherapist, in some ways you're psychoanalyzing people.
We have to be very mindful of how we approach situations, but you're not out of the ballpark. I mean, we are dealing with a lot of, especially new stressors over the past year, like you'd mentioned before, and we don't necessarily get as many people that say, I need help with stress and my eating regarding stress. A lot of times what has happened is it's already too late. They've been very, very stressed, and they've been overeating, indulging in certain food items that have caused them to gain weight. And then they come in, and what ends up happening is we find, the reason why, you've gained the weight that you have is because as a result of what I'm hearing. And then we can make our recommendations based on what we're hearing as far as how we, suggest this individual go on with their health and wellness goals.
last question for this segment, Travis. Let's go back to exercise because when we last had you on, I think that there's a symbiotic relationship between eating well and what that means in terms of nutrition and your overall health, but also exercise. And exercise is a great distressor. And I'm not sitting on a board right here and saying I know everything, because sometimes I don't even exercise. But it really seems like it's a good way to distress, and that would help you with your diet needs.
100%. So when you elevate your heart rate and you increase that exercise, the stimulation associated with exercise, it releases good feeling hormones. And what happens is when you're stressed, it releases certain types of hormones. When you're exercising, it releases certain types of hormones. But those hormones can't reverse back out and turn into a different type of hormone, right? So when you have your good feeling hormones, they can't turn into bad feeling hormones and vice versa. So when you exercise, your body produces those good feeling hormones, and it truly does make us feel good. Maybe not in the moment, but when you're finished, that hormone release makes us feel good. And that's why we say, I'm really glad I took a walk today. I'm really glad I took a run. I'm really glad I went for a bike ride. We realize that a lot of times after the fact, but it does make us feel good. Yeah.
And I lied. It's not the last question. One more. Does this account for, is this the same whether you are lifting weights, you mentioned bike riding, going for a walk? Can you feel this neurotransmitter, for lack of I'm not an expert, that gets secreted, that you feel that high, if you will? But can you get that regardless of the type of physical activity, or do you have to do a cardiovascular activity like biking or running or walking?
Usually you do want to elevate your heart rate. I try to recommend at least 10 minutes of elevated heart rate at a given time. So weightlifting, depending on, are you doing a weightlifting class, perhaps, that keeps the pace up, even though you are doing a weightlifting exercise. But majority of the time, it's easiest and quickest to get that elevated heart rate through either, an exercise machine, or by just utilizing the outdoor social distance, right? Go for a brisk walk, not a casual walk. So a lot of times, you might not want to take your dog, right? Unless your dog is pretty up paced. And they'll enjoy it too. So they get the interaction and the joy of all that enjoyment from a walk. But you want something brisk, and so a bike ride, a brisk walk, a run, exercise equipment that's going to keep things fast-paced, or weightlifting that's going to be fast-paced as well. Yeah,
really good ideas. Travis, as I said, I need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk more about nutrition, exercise, and what you can do taking your next step forward. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Travis Chilcott of Nutrition HealthWorks. Travis, thanks as always for staying with us this morning.
Hey, again, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. Are there some foods that we should be thinking about as we're shopping the grocery store aisles, whether it's the perimeter or the aisles, that would help reduce anxiety and stress?
So there have been some foods that do link to lower stress levels, or even just better nutrition overall, which can also help reduce stress. And there's a small list. So certainly magnesium and calcium and potassium are big drivers to all that. A lot of nervous system reasons and things like that. So a lot of times we do recommend dairy products. If you've ever heard the warm glass of milk before you go to bed type of thing, it does have some merit to it, because some of the micronutrients that I mentioned before promote better sleep. They promote a sense of calmness. Oatmeal is usually a good source. I know generally people will have that in the morning times. If I don't want it hot, I sometimes mix it in my smoothie. And that has some of those great micronutrients that are going to help the nervous system and things. Other items, high fiber foods, because digestion when you're stressed can be a challenge. A lot of times we lose the appeal of appetite with stress so much. Or unlike the first section of this episode, talking about overindulgence, sometimes people don't eat enough when they're stressed. And so getting quality oils and seeds, chia seeds is one thing, hemp seeds is another thing. Recommend fish oils. That helps to promote great digestion, which can help even reduce stress. Magnesium, so high nuts, seeds, spinach, leafy greens, things like that will help. Of course, fruits and vegetables as well. So those are the main ones that I would recommend trying to focus on to help manage and reduce stress.
And it sounds like Popeye was certainly on the right course for reducing his stress, and maybe that's why he always saved olive oil. Travis, let's talk about sleep. How important is sleep to relieving anxiety, and how do you relieve the anxiety so that you can sleep?
So that's a big one. That's a real big one.
Well, we've got enough time. We've got about 5 minutes left in the segment.
No, it's perfect. It's a perfect question. So yes, another huge component. And people say, well, what does food have to do with stress? But it's funny, but you would be amazed at the number of people, some of the first side effects, we call it side effects, right? But the first effects of what they feel when they get in better eating patterns, better eating habits, seeking out a dietitian or other nutrition professional. The number of times people have said, you know what, I just sleep better, and it's pretty interesting. We can purposely focus on certain things that are going to help us sleep. We all know sleep helps us cope with stress, rejuvenate our bodies for the next day, and even days thereafter when you look at certain studies. So one thing, you can turn to some foods. I mentioned the high calcium, high magnesium foods, like I mentioned, a yogurt or like a low fat milk, for example. You don't have to drink it warm. But the nuts and seeds that I mentioned are really good too. But if you want to get into something that's more of like a tea, I know a lot of people do those. A nighttime tea of valerian root is one of the products. Chamomile tea, of course, you want to check with your doctor about any of this, but chamomile teas are nice. They promote like a lot of calming within the body, which certainly can help promote you to fall asleep. And then we've probably all heard of melatonin before.
Yes.
So melatonin helps you to stay in the rhythm of your sleep cycle. So, it helps you to create a sounder sleep. And so melatonin is something that I would certainly recommend, for that you could take, and you can take a pill form of it. You can get it over the counter. It's very easy to get it at just a health type food store or online, etc. And it's great to have melatonin. I do recommend, however, to cycle melatonin. It's naturally occurring in the body, but of course you can take it, so it's not harmful. It's just you want to cycle that type of if you go that avenue.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing, it sounds like it's the full regimen of things. You need to have a solid diet, and it doesn't mean you give up the things you like. Like you can have a scoop of ice cream, but that's going to be helpful. Don't deprive yourself, but make sure you're eating well, you're exercising, you're getting sleep, and maybe Travis, you have a more positive outlook on life. And I guess the thing I always relate to when I'm going through tough times, and it's been tough for me as well, as it has been for everybody, where you're going to get tripped up, and to know that life isn't a perfect experience, and to know that we all go through ups and downs. So there's no one out there who hasn't gone through a down, and if they've gone through an up, and then no one that has a perfect life. I think that perspective, I would think, would be very helpful to dealing with some of the issues you've described today.
We look at it from start to finish, from the time you wake up to the time you wake up, So I agree, and nutrition is, there's certain things you can control and there's certain things you can't. You cannot control the stressors that are in our lives most of the time, right? But we can control what we eat. We can control how we exercise. So we're controlling, how we react to the stressors, and that can change how the stressors overall affect you as a person. If we can reduce that, we can reduce the quality or increase the quality of life, excuse me.
And extend longevity, which I think we're all going for. We want to live a long, full, and healthy life. Travis, I think we solved it. I think we got it. I hope everyone took notes. I know I took some notes. I'm going to head out and get some dark chocolate, get some magnesium, and get to sleep. Travis Chilcott, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on again very soon.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.